So it's
Wait, the technology. William, here is the technology. I've asked you to simply make it smaller.
okay, sir, that's what we're trying to do, but honestly, it's impossible.
The Dwemer was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
Well, I'm sorry. I'm not
The Dwemer.
The Dwemer. They subscribe to the Dr. Stone school of we can do anything with the power of science. Except they combine science with magic to do some of the craziest things in any fantasy setting. They made robots, gunpowder, although I'm pretty sure they never put it in a gun, geothermal energy, tuning forks that can rewrite reality, half the inventions you see on Nexus mods, a way to transcribe an Elder Scroll, which is bloody insane, oh, and a literal god. They made an actual god. There are so many mysteries as to how the Dwemer did this specifically, and if those unknown are even capable of recreating this technology, magic, or whatever you want to call it, but that isn't the main mystery around these Dwemer. No, the real question is, where in Mundus did they go? And that's even assuming they're on Mundus. Throughout the Elder Scrolls series, we are only met with the aftermath of their disappearance. Well, there is this guy, but look at the state of him. He, barely counts. So why did they disappear? Where did they go? And what were they trying to achieve? Well, to answer all three questions effectively, we need context. So strap into your Dwemer-made car, because today we're looking at the Dwemer.
Do you like this place? It took me the better part of a decade to perfect it. Every stone and flower tells a story. Tales of how things were.
To understand where the Dwemer potentially went, we need to understand three things. 1. The Dwemer's relationship with the gods, or rather their lack of relationship. 2. Their relationship with everyone else, or again, their lack of a relationship. And 3. How their stuff actually works. Let's work backwards, beginning with their magic and how they're actually able to do basically anything they want with their technology. Of course, like any other fantasy dwarf, the Dwemer have an incredible understanding of forging and metalwork beyond practically anyone else in the world, letting them create their unique Dwemer metal alloy and their grand cities, which still stand sort of functional thousands of years later. To this day, this Dwemer metal alloy cannot be recreated, although it can be reforged, sort of like Valyrian steel in Game of Thrones. Still, metalworking alone doesn't explain, all of that. The Dwemer are famous for a type of magic called tonal architecture, the manipulation of sound to alter reality, not too dissimilar to the Thu'um or dragon shouts. Although it's less of a language for the Dwemer and more of an art. Tonal architects were known to use their voice in their art, and were known to utilise it for mining, medicine, architecture and even psychology, showing its versatility. Speaking of psychology, they wore Dwemeri tonal attenuators, or essentially Dwemer building helmets, to prevent them from being affected by their own magic, which allowed them to bend weaker-willed minds. Somewhat similar to the bend will shout, and I do want to preface that this seeming relationship between the Thu'um and tonal architecture is more than just a coincidence. Both are examples of the third walking way, one of the methods to reach apotheosis, essentially becoming a god. And if you want to know more about becoming a god yourself, at least in the Elder Scrolls world, check out this Talos video. But this is something I want you to remember for later, because godhood is more of a goal than anything else for the Dwemer. And while tonal architecture gave them access to one of these walking ways, specifically the Prolix Tower, it wasn't really enough for them. They seem to have made tonal architecture pretty accessible too, with an example of their tools coming from tonal tuning forks. Yes, I wasn't joking about tuning forks being able to rewrite reality earlier. It's not just the Dragonborn with overpowered forks. They also had a bunch of other complete bollocks at their disposal, including automatons powered by soul gems, which we see all the time in Skyrim, helmets that let them use telepathy even over very long distances, airships, And then there's Etherium, which is a mineral that might have ties to Aetherius itself. And, well, you can get 2 star signs with the Etherium crown. Somehow. Long story short, Dwemer magic is less advanced technology and more reality warping cheating. I mean, I can't say anything. I know console commands like the back of my hand. Then there's the Dwemer's relationship with the Divine. They, don't really have a relationship with the Divine. Well, not a good one anyway. You see, unlike practically everyone else, the Dwemer don't worship any god that we know. And emphasis on the we know part of that, although we do know that they hated the Daedra and scorned their worshippers, which put them into conflict with the Chimera, essentially the older version of the Dunmer, who are known to worship the 3 good Daedra, who really aren't all that good. I mean, Mthal's in it. Ugh. The problem is, we don't have a lot of records from the Dwemer, only other people's interpretations. They didn't really make it easy for others to learn from them. One of these main interpretations comes from Vivek, and according to him, the Dwemer preferred their gods of logic and reason. We don't know if this is literal, as in there are gods of logic and reason, or if this is metaphorical, and the Dwemer's gods are logic and reason. I'm more inclined to believe the latter, since this is more in line with the Dwemer we know. Arrogant, powerful, and letting absolutely nothing stop them from doing whatever they want, including morals and, well, the rules of reality. They clearly worshipped something though. There were Dwemer temples, with Arena having one in a place called Fang Lair. Although Dwemer religion is apparently one of the most complicated puzzles that scholars studying these deep elves face. And that's taking their technology into mind. Basically, Bethesda hasn't got around to writing anything about Dwemer religion. That's my conclusion, but what I want you to take away is that they clearly have little or no respect for the gods that we are familiar with, and are worshipped across Tamriel. That's sort of why they end up getting into trouble with a lot of other people. Now the Dwemer will fight anyone, including each other, with the only thing really stopping them being geography. Well, not the Lorkhan clan. The Lorkhan clan, the guys behind both Spellbreaker and Volendrung, which later became Daedric artifacts, namely of Periite and Malakath, went on a big old journey west. I have a Malakath video if you want to know more information about how Volendrung came into the Daedric prince's hands, but on the Lorkhan clan's journey to the west, no, not that kind, to what would later become Hammerfell, they fought the Nords, specifically the Great Mage Shalador, the guy whose statue stands in the centre of the College of Winterhold, and it should be noted that this beef with the Nords is a historical one for the Dwemer. When Ysgramor's line still ruled Skyrim, they got into a war with High King Gelir, probably one of Skyrim's greatest tactical minds, who conquered several dwarven cities including Mzulft, although this was because the Dwemer came fresh from a civil war, known as the Etherium Wars, which we learn about during the Lost to the Ages Skyrim quest. Long story short with that one, a bunch of cities worked together to forge Etherium equipment, but because these Dwemer cities tended to act more like city-states, each city wanted more control over the stuff, so they started murdering each other for it. Anyway, the Nords aren't the only rival to the Dwemer, for their main foe is the Chimera, with whom they disagree on a fundamental level, mocking them for their Daedra worship. Their many conflicts in the past seem to have stemmed from territorial disputes, with the Dwemer taking up residence in the Velothi Mountains, while the Chimera made their home in Morrowind. While the Dwemer had all these technological advantages, the Chimera had the power of gods and, well, not quite anime, but enough juice to compete. The most famous of these wars was the War of the First Council, but we'll get to that later. I'm still trying to talk about all the people the Dwemer were at war with, and the last we have to mention is the Falmer. After Ysgramor and his boys arrived in Skyrim the second time around, which was after the Snow Elves destroyed the Atmoran city of Sarthul, they found themselves getting the belt. Once the final leader of the Snow Elves fell, the Snow Prince, being murked by a child, it's a long story and I'll probably do that in another video, Skyrim was effectively lost to the elves. These snow elves fled to their neighbours for sanctuary, but the Dwemer, being pretty awful hosts, fed them toxic fungus to make them blind and force them into servitude. Yeah, if you haven't figured it out yet, the Dwemer are arseholes, but they're mer. It's kinda part of the package. Anyway, as time went on, the now blind Falmer, with a new perverted culture, managed to start a rebellion, a great subterranean war known as the War of the Crag. Now leading up to the disappearance of the Dwemer, these dwarves were at war with the Kaimer, the Falmer, and had the Nords charging over the horizon, leading to a great nexus point, the final battle of the Dwemer, the Battle of the Red Mountain.
What a fool you are. I'm a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence.
We're almost done with the context, I promise, but in the Red Mountain, the Dwemer discovered the Heart of Lorkhan. You see, the story goes that shortly after the creation of the world, Lorkhan had his heart ripped out by the god Trinimac at the behest of his lord, Auriel, following a great war between elves and men. With his legendary bow, Auriel fired his brother's heart into the sea, and the island of Vardenfell, where the Red Mountain stands proudly, was formed. Now if you want to know more about Lorkhan, guess what, I also have a video about him. But once the Dwemer had discovered the heart, they immediately got to work to use it as a power source for their most ambitious project ever, the Numidium, a giant mech with the powers of a true divine. To do this, the tonal architect, Kagranak, made tools to harness the power of the heart with the intention that this artificial deity would push the entire Dwemer people into ascension, although we're not quite sure what ascension means, and we also don't know if Dumak, the king of the Dwemer, knew about the whole god mech plan. He pleaded innocence when confronted by his old friend, Indarul Nerevar, apparently, but because the plan was intended to ascend all Dwemer, I highly doubt that Dumak didn't know about it, especially because the construction of the Numidium caused the Kaimer to go to war with the Dwemer. If he was really innocent, he probably would have given Kagranak up, not backed him up for a war. At the time, the Falmer were in the middle of their revolt, and when the Nords heard the Heart of Lorkhan was found, they summoned the ghost of one of their greatest heroes, Ysmir Wulfharth, and the spirit of Lorkhan himself, to lead them to reclaim the heart, and revive their patron god. Thus, while in Italy all roads lead to Rome, here all roads led to the Red Mountain, and the ground for one of the greatest battles in Tamriel's history was set. But we don't have objective details of what actually happened. There are conflicting reports depending on the perspective you're looking at. They either largely come from Nord or the Kaimer/Dunmer perspectives. For the sake of this video, we will be looking at Vivek's perspective predominantly because it focuses on the Dwemer more, and while the Nords were certainly part of the battle, they were definitely the biggest losers. When they rolled up with Lorkhan, Wulfharth and Orc mercenaries in tow, don't really know how that happened, the Kaimer and Dwemer suddenly remembered they hate non-mer more, or something. They got together to deal with the Nords, and like that, they packed up and went home. Yeah, Vivek doesn't really mention the Nords that much, but other perspectives state that Wulfharth got turned back into ash. The Nords got their butts kicked so badly they rethought their entire philosophy around the Thu'um. Oh, and Shaw's ghost got buried under the Red Mountain, which boots them out of the conversation early on during the battle. Yeah, fighting the divinely backed Kaimer and the stupidly technologically advanced Dwemer at the same time is not the greatest idea the Nords have ever had, even if they had their Thu'um powers back then. Anyway, the moment the Nords get sent back home, the Dwemer and Kaimer get right back to tearing each other apart. You see, Dagolth enters the picture, and he's what we call in the business a shit stirrer. He's the one who told the Nords about the Heart of Lorkhan, and he's also the guy who snitched on the Dwemer to the Kaimer about the Numidium. The dude's a rat. A really funny rat. Lord here is the reason why the relationship between King Dumak and Indra Nerevar, which was once strong, fell to bits, causing the war to start. His deception hadn't quite been found yet, and when Nerevar managed to bring the majority of the Dwemer forces out of the Red Mountain through his tactics, he brought Dagoth and some companions into the mountain. There he confronted his old friend, Dumak, and his chief tonal architect, Kagranak. Nerevar and Dumak got into a fierce battle that only once close friends could, and both collapsed from grievous wounds. Threatened by Dagoth which, I mean, let's be honest, you don't really want to be in a room alone with Dagoth, Kagranak panicked and used his tools on the Heart of Lorkhan, but right then and there, every single Dwemer vanished. Every single one. Well, except for this guy. He was in a different dimension at the time. Now after that, which we won't focus on too much, Nerevar dies, Dagoth kinda dies, the Tribunal used the tools of Kagranak on the Heart of Lorkhan to become gods, breaking a promise made to Nerevar, which led to Azura cursing the Kai'Ma into the Dunmer. Dagoth got better, Nerevar reincarnated into the Nerevarine, and we still don't know where the Dwemer went. I am skipping a lot of the aftermath in this video, but because we're focusing on the Dwemer, and the Dwemer just vanish here, it's not really that relevant. It should also be noted that the Numidium didn't get fully activated, and that this action from Kagranak was pretty last minute. So what were the Dwemer originally trying to do? And what actually happened? Well, we don't know. But we can theorize. Game theorize. Bring in the map pack gifs.
Ask and I will answer truthfully. Just know that the truth often fails to satisfy. You expect something grand, but I promised you the truth.
So, Dwemer around the world vanished, even those in Hammerfell. Where did they go? To figure that out, we need to work out the original plan from the Dwemer. It is theoretically simple, yet complicated when you try to unpick it, but long story short, the Dwemer were in search of eternal life, although the form that the Dwemer intended is unknown. We don't know whether they wanted to become godly or just live forever. One theory is that the Dwemer were looking to their past in search of eternal life, sort of similar to what the Altmer are doing now. You see, Ulmer apparently come from the land called Almiris, descending from the Elnafe, immortal spirits who were the first to inhabit the world. As the world was being made, these Elnafe began to lose their immortality, and become the still long-lived elves we know. The Dwemer's plan could have been to rewrite this and turn themselves back into the old Elnafe, thus giving them that immortality they're looking for. They could also be looking to detach entirely from Nirn and burst into Aetherius like the Magna Gi, godly beings who began helping in the world's creation, then bailed out when they realised they were losing their powers. Thus, the Dwemer could have been looking to go fully Magna Gi and be immortal in Aetherius, a realm of theoretically godly beings. Perhaps these were the gods of logic and reason that Vivek was talking about. Because of Ethereum, a resource that the Dwemer cared about so much, which has potential links to Aetherius, perhaps getting to Aetherius was the goal. This would explain the disappearance of the Dwemer, and maybe they were never looking to stay in Nirn to begin with. This could explain why they were relatively unbothered by the Falmer's rebellion, and didn't seem to be too bothered by fighting almost everyone they could. Still, that's assuming the Dwemer succeeded, and what are the chances they didn't? Well, pretty high. Theoretically, if the Aetherius idea happened, that would mean the souls of the Dwemer would be transported to Aetherius en masse. And yet we do see Dwemer souls in Morrowind. Now this could be a special case, since we see them in Morrowind but not in Skyrim, so perhaps these are the souls of those who were slain during or before the Battle of the Red Mountain. This would mean that only the Dwemer who survived until Kagranak hit the heart button yeah, we'll go with that, got transported to Aetherius. This makes some sense, I think. Still, the War of the Crag was centered in Skyrim, and we don't see a single Dwemer ghost. These ghosts could be echoes of the past, echoes created by the Heart of Lorkhan. But you can talk to one of them. Redak... we're just gonna keep with Redak. In the Tribunal expansion. And he seems pretty aware that he's dead, initially asking you to leave an old spirit to his haunts. So he's doing some Scooby-Doo villainy, I guess. Another bit of evidence against the whole we went to Aetherius thing also comes from the Tribunal expansion. In a Dwemer ruin under Mournhold, which is a bunch of ashes around the place, implying that these were once Dwemer. So maybe the Heart of Lorkhan just fried them all? It's hard to say, given that the Dwemer ruins we see in Morrowind and Skyrim don't have any ashes except for this specific one in Tribunal, so, I don't know. Maybe the whole ashes thing is completely separate to the events of the Battle of the Red Mountain. Another question is whether the gods themselves would actually fry all the Dwemer at once, and essentially exterminate a race, or if it's a possible side effect of misusing the Heart of Lorkhan. To be honest, I can't rule either out. As I've said before about the Dwemer, it doesn't really seem like they have any friends on any divine pantheon, so perhaps there were plenty of gods chomping at the bit to ruin the Dwemer when they started messing around with the Heart of Lorkhan. Lorkhan's heart is tied with Nirn itself, so perhaps messing around with it just threw them all out. Or perhaps they ended up in oblivion somehow. I highly doubt this though, because at least one Daedric prince would brag about it, and theoretically Hermaeus Mora would be the one looking for the Dwemer most thanks to their knowledge, but there is no evidence of the Dwemer being there either. But I am convinced that the Dwemer were put somewhere, and a reason for that is the device that caused their disappearance, the Heart of Lorkhan, and this is going to require some more context. You know, I'm beginning to think I should rename this channel to Nox's Context.
Yes, in comment, I am validity, and I can answer all your questions.
So, the Heart of Lorkhan obviously belongs to the missing god, Lorkhan. It's kind of in the name. Lorkhan is known as a god and champion of humanity, and he is known to be a trickster who helped make the world, tying him to it. He is also quite dead, because his heart is concretely not in his ribcage, and his blood is ebony, which is why the material spews from the Red Mountain and is so plentiful in Morrowind. For this point specifically though, the main thing I want you to know is that one of Lorkhan's main spheres is space. He essentially helped create the space in which mortals inhabit, although this specific sphere seems to be an out-of-game allocation. It comes from one of Michael Kirkbride's writings, so, as always, take it with a pinch of salt, although some sort of proof of this comes from his twin brother, Akatosh. Well, Akatosh might not be the twin, it's a long story which I cover in this Akatosh video, but for the sake of simplicity, Akatosh is Lorkhan's twin. That's what we're going to go with here. Now Akatosh is the dragon god of time, and as the twin and opposite, it would make sense for Lorkhan to be the god of space. It's Pokemon logic. Dialga and Palkia, time and space. Akatosh and Lorkhan, same thing really. Now as the god of space, using or rather misusing his heart as the Dwemer did most likely mean the Dwemer were moved through spaces rather than through time. This is an important point because it means that the Dwemer more than likely did not time travel, since I don't really see how Lorkhan's powers would allow for this. Yes, they could rewrite reality, so realistically anything goes, but it doesn't seem like Akatosh had anything to do with this, and if there was something timey-wimey going on, there would more than likely be a dragon break, and a pretty big one at that. Although it should be noted that the Numidium can cause dragon breaks, or at least was at the centre of one during Daggerfall. But it does seem that the dragon break in Daggerfall, which makes all the endings canon, was a retroactive thing from Bethesda. But back to the Dwemer. Now to my knowledge, there wasn't a dragon break around the Battle of the Red Mountain, and it does seem like an event that could have caused one, especially because there are so many perspectives about the battle itself. But because I couldn't find proof of one, and feel free to correct me here, I'm pretty sure time travel isn't happening. But that leads me to one more theory. What if the Dwemer were taken to the void? Now I explain this in detail in my Sithis video, but again for the sake of simplicity, what you need to know from this is that most agree that Lorkhan is from Sithis, or rather Padme, the other, the representation of chaos and the void, a primordial being older than every god besides his twin, Anu. Now Akatosh is said to be of Anu, so you can see the whole opposites theme going on here, but the Dwemer use the Heart of Lorkhan, and as a result could have been transported to the void. This would theoretically be where the Dark Brotherhood assassins send their victims, and where Lucien LeChance is summoned from in Skyrim. Technically, this would be a place where the Dwemer would be eternal, since there is meant to be nothing in the void, and thus nothing would make the Dwemer immortal. Although I am assuming their souls were sent there. If it were just their bodies, then a bunch of Dwemer are floating in space, all Viltrumite style. Yeah, then they would all be dead. Still, is this what the Dwemer actually would have wanted? I would assume not, since they are all about creation and pushing the boundaries of reality. There is nothing to work with in the void. It is often painted as a place that Padme is exiled to because of its nothingness, to prevent them from causing more chaos. So I don't think this is an ideal location for the Dwemer and their eternal lives. They could perhaps be thralls of Sithis in the void too, with their hubris leading to their ultimate punishment, ironically coming from their ultimate creation. And there's a thematic reason as to why I think this would work. This is very out of game, but the Dwemer do seem to have a lot of ancient Greek myth elements, specifically from Hephaestus, god of the forge. The many Dwemer automatons are one example of this, since the word automaton was made by the ancient Greeks, and Hephaestus was known to make essentially bronze robots. One example of this, who resembles the Numidium, is the great bronze giant Talos. This is also all happening in a giant volcano, the Red Mountain, similar to Hephaestus' forge in Mount Etna. A major theme in Greek myth is a negative character trait being the downfall of a Greek hero. Sometimes it's wrath, as is the case with Achilles and Heracles. Well, technically adultery did Heracles in, but wrath got him into trouble multiple times. In any case, the most prominent negative character trait among Greek heroes is hubris, and that is something the Dwemer have shown as a collective throughout their history. Going after power and eternal life the way the Dwemer have, as well as mocking the gods, specifically the Dunmer ones, clearly shows their arrogance and hubris. This hubris, especially against the gods, is always punished in Greek myth, and if we follow this story template, the Dwemer, for their perversion of a god's heart, are punished too. Thus they get their eternal life, but it doesn't come in the way that they want. This makes more thematic sense to me, but unfortunately, for other out-of-game reasons, I don't think this is going to be the case. In truth, there probably isn't an answer because Bethesda hasn't decided on one. The mystery here is more intriguing than having a real answer. And more than that, keeping answers vague also gives Bethesda more narrative options. Without committing to an answer, Bethesda can really do whatever it wants with the Dwemer, and can even choose to bring them back in some format, although I highly doubt this will be the case. The Dwemer being this long gone civilization with more questions than answers is just too good to waste on actually giving any real answers. This also means they can go even more abstract with the Dwemer, kind of like how the modding community does. Someone bring back some airships. But it also saves Bethesda from something else. You see, I don't think the answer has ever been concrete, and it does seem like there are some inconsistencies. The Ash in the Tribunal Morrowind DLC conflicts with what we know about the Dwemer's disappearances, and the lack of Dwemer ghosts in Skyrim compared to Morrowind only raises more questions. If you don't give any answers, you don't need to address these questions. Chances are we'll see more Dwemer related things in the Elder Scrolls 6, since it's more than likely taking place in either Hammerfell or the wider Iliac Bay, and that region is famous for its Dwemer ruins. Hammerfell has the giant city of Vollenfell, once home to the Lorkhan clan. I wouldn't expect any answers here though, especially because of the distance from the Red Mountain. Just more theories.
Hear me out now. What if Shadow Bonnie is actually Darkiplier because they're both shadow people from the Shadow Universe, which probably means that Yu-Gi-Oh's involved too, which would make it a film theory. You laugh. You laugh. But it could be a real thing. It makes sense. It makes so much sense.
So, all in all, my bet is the Dwemer were transported en masse to either Aetherius or the Void. Those would be my guesses, although I doubt Todd Howard would give you a straight answer if you asked him. So, give me your weirdest and wildest theories about the Dwemer. I reckon you guys can be pretty creative. The Dwemer are one of the best elements in the Elder Scrolls in my opinion, and arrogant, technologically advanced, not dwarf elves, who are also complete bastards, are great fun, but that element is enhanced by their mystery. I love theorising about this one, but I think this is one of the few times where I don't actually want an answer from Bethesda. It would just feel underwhelming. If they do give us one though, I really hope I'm right somewhere here. Anyway, please do the whole YouTube ritual thing of liking, commenting and subscribing, and if you enjoyed this video, I hope to see you in another one later down the line. Now, time to find me a Dwemer train mod, like the London Underground, but Skyrim. Yes.